Mic check, mic check.
I have all the power. Me talking for like an hour and a half. What time is it? 1:06. Okay, we have time. It's 1:06. What's our time schedule for this? I just hid the bar thingy. Which does mean I can't see when comments pop up, but I feel like that's less annoying to watch, so.
They're gonna be monitoring.
Yeah, also, the power button for this computer is right here, which is the worst design. Sick, good to know.
mics are on, yes?
Should we?
Yeah, sure, let's start.
Alrighty, welcome, guys. We're starting. Yeah.
I don't know how to mute this. It's just go.
Just
All right, we're going to start by introducing all of the YTAB members. So I think we're all just going to stand up right now and introduce ourselves. My name is Levi Cervantes. I'm a junior at Sacred Heart Cathedral. My pronouns are he and him.
yeah. I'm Antakan Deveren. I'm a junior at the Bay School of San Francisco. My pronouns are also he and him.
So I'm Angel. I'm also a junior at Galileo High School, and I also use he, him pronouns.
I'm Lindsay. I'm a senior at Abraham Lincoln, and I use she, her pronouns. And YTAB members over here, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Okay, so we're meeting today because we feel that youth have been underrepresented in SFMTA for too long. And so hopefully we can educate the youth on the inner workings of the SFMTA, as well as gain feedback that we can use to improve SFMTA for youth experiences. And it's also important to note that we're only taking public comment from the youth, and although we're grateful to the adults that joined, they should refrain from giving feedback in our forms.
This is all of us. So these are what our meetings normally look like. Yeah. So what is YTAB? As you might have guessed, YTAB stands for Youth Transportation Advisory Board. YTAB was created in 2020 because SFMTA cares about youth input and opinions. This board was created to represent youth in SFMTA by reporting directly to the board of directors. YTAB is a representative board. Our goals and vision. Our overall goal as a committee is to help youth understand what goes on at the SFMTA. We are working towards this goal through holding events such as this one, social media, and online surveys. Youth engagement is essential to our jobs so that we can properly communicate the needs of all youth in San Francisco. Our goals include creating an equitably and inclusively staffed board that accurately represents the diverse needs of San Francisco youth, purposeful youth-led work, meaning that YTAB members contribute and feel that their ideas and recommendations are heard within the agency, creating better processes and outcomes through intentional consideration of youth perspectives, and professional and leadership development by improving board members' communication, advocacy, knowledge, and confidence. We'd like to start by asking you all what you hope YTAB achieves. Does anyone have any goals that they think we should be working towards?
Personally, myself, I joined YTAB because I've seen problems in the SFMTA for myself and other youth. And so one of my goals is just improving overall the SFMTA, especially the buses and trains and how they help the youth.
Anything from y'all?
No? Okay. So we'll move on to a little bit of the SFMTA history and responsibilities. So the San Francisco Municipal Railway was founded on December 12, 1912. Back then, most of SF was just rails, streetcars, and cable cars, which were dominant. In the 50s, most of the rails got replaced by the trolley buses that are still running today, and due to the car industry. Over the years, Muni has changed their fleet of buses and making them part of SF style and culture. The current fleet consists of hybrid electric motor buses, electric trolley buses, light rail, streetcars, and cable cars, making it one of the most eco-friendly fleets in the United States. So most recently, in 1999, San Francisco voters mandated a proposition
Recording in
called
progress.
LC, which would combine multiple existing agencies like the Municipal Railway, MUNI, the Taxi Commission, and the Department of Parking and Traffic as one agency. Once it got on the ballot, San Francisco voters approved it, and the SFMTA, San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency, was created, which is now not just responsible for public transportation, but it's also responsible for all bicycling, paratransit, parking, traffic, walking, and the taxis, making it the second biggest agency in San Francisco behind the Department of Public Health. Today, MUNI is the 7th largest system in the United States and the 2nd largest in California. This is just a little bit of MUNI's long and unique history, which makes it unique to San Francisco history and American transportation history dating back since the 1840s. So, the responsibilities of the SFMTA. So again, short for the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency, or well known as MUNI. It oversees public transit, taxis, bicycle infrastructure, pedestrian infrastructure, and paratransit for the city and county of San Francisco. If you don't know what paratransit is, it's basically a private form of transportation for all people who are disabled and unable to use the buses and bus lines that don't reach their destinations. The SFMTA is governed by the SFMTA Board of Directors, who are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. So the agency is responsible for all the management of ground transportation in the city. It oversees the municipal railway, public transit, vehicle and infrastructure, and maintaining the streets so that they are safe for vehicles, as well as bicycling, traffic, walking, street parking, taxis, paratransit, as well as maintaining the budget and the staffing.
So before we start this activity, we'd like to invite one of our other YTAB members, Alexander, to talk about why we are collecting this feedback and what we will do with it.
So, brief note about why we're doing this is that, as it was referenced before by Levi, the agency has not done a good job. So as Levi was talking about, one of the things with the SFMTA and MUNI before it was in the SFMTA is that there's not historically been a good job at conducting outreach to youth and getting input from youth. So YTAB was created in part to rectify this. With that said, the input and the feedback that you guys give in the activities that we are doing for this town hall, that data allows us to actually give recommendations to the agency for what youth need and what youth want done to the system. So if you suffer from, say, lack of school trippers on your bus lines home from school, if there is issues with crowding on your buses, if there's issues with cars speeding down your streets, if there are experiences you've had where you've been nearly hit by drivers in crosswalks, if there are, and basically to sort of simplify down, if there are things you want the SFMTA to do to make moving around in San Francisco easier for you as a youth, please fill these surveys and please complete these activities thoroughly and carefully, because that allows us to actually do our jobs and make sure that you guys have a better experience moving throughout the city.
Yeah, so as Alexander just touched on, this form will only be filled out by youth. So if y'all could take out your phones, and if you don't have a phone, we have iPads back there for to use. And just fill it out. This form is specifically about your experiences, and the data from this, as Alexander touched upon, will be used to improve MUNI and other SFMTA departments. As you do fill out this form, we have some YTAB members here who, will be asking you some questions and who will be kind of leading some small group discussions. And at the end of that, Lindsay over here will be holding, kind of a bigger discussion with all of y'all.
And just a note, again, thank you everyone for coming. We are only taking youth input for this survey and all other surveys. And YTAB members, if you would like to talk to any of the attendees and ask more questions, feel free to do that now.
Okay, we're doing good on time. We're doing good on time.
Can I just get a check? Whoever is done with their form, please just put your hand up really quick. Okay, great. Okay, we'd now like to have a more group-led discussion about any experiences that you've had on Muni. Would anyone like to share out in more detail about one specific experience they had or something that really defined your Muni transportation experience? For example, when I used to take the 48 to and from school every day, and I frequently had frustration with the bus skipping, not when it was overcrowded, but for no apparent reason. And there may be an underlying reason because of that, but that is actually part of why I joined YTAB. Yes?
Hi, I'm Aiden. For those of you who don't know. Thank you. And I guess one of my experiences, I started going to Lowell this year. This is my first year. And so instead of taking the 38 that comes, every 2 or 3 minutes in the morning, I've been taking the 18 and the 29. And the 29 especially, the bus will be completely packed, and a lot of the kids, I push my way on. Look, I'm getting home. But, the other kids who are like not willing to, do that, they're just standing at the stop for, 3, 4, 5 buses. And I think it really doesn't help now also the way that they've, redone the bell schedules for SFUSD, because not only is it the Lowell kids, it's the kids from Lincoln, SI, Washington, not necessarily Washington, but I guess like, what is that school? By like Balboa Park, Lick, Balboa. It's just, the entire route is all schools. So it's just always packed. And then the kids on board, they can be pretty rude to like the operators. Like I was on the bus the other day and the kid did not pull the cord, and they're like shouting at the operator, let me off, let me off. And I just feel bad for the operators because, especially with how crowded it is, it's like it can't be feeling very safe for them, coming to work like that.
When you all were filling out the form, were there any experiences you felt were specifically common for youth more than people in general, or specifically that people need to address regarding youth? Thank you, Chiamaka.
Thank you. I think one of the biggest ones, especially along the 28, which is usually how I get home, is just that there's so many schools that get out within half an hour of each other. And so it can overwhelm the system quite quickly.
And Alexander?
Just a reflection from the two people I was talking to, but both of them said that they rely on Muni to get to school, but neither of them were able to actually figure out that their bus to school was not running from the agency or the school district. One heard for it through a volunteer, through the Transit Riders Union, and the other just happened to hear it from, I believe they said it was a friend of theirs. But there was not any communication from the agency or the school district that their bus to school, their commute to school was not actually possible, because not possible in the way they were doing it before, because nobody told them that the bus wasn't running from the agency or from the school district.
And hello? Right in the middle.
I guess just like something in general. With youth, they have less options with transportation because like most of them can't drive. So I guess like timeliness of bus matters more. Like for example, like when the bus like ghosts on you and you're just like waiting and then you're late to school. But like for people who like can actually drive, it's easier for them. But like deadlines are harder on youth.
And when you reflect on your positive experiences riding Muni, what do you think is the most important factor in having a good transit experience? So whether it's your bus is clean, it's not super crowded, is there anything you find really important to having a positive experience?
I think the key for me is really just speed. I'm trying to get where I'm trying to go, like, pretty fast. So that's a lot of things. It's like having the, bus lane so the bus is not stuck in traffic. That's definitely helpful. Something specifically with the 29 that I've experienced, and the 18 for that matter, it stops every single block, which I guess it can be useful for people who cannot, maybe walk as far. But it just seems excessive because then the bus like misses the light and it just takes forever. And then the other key I think is like transferring and trying to get where I'm going fast. So, when my, the other bus is like right there, like 3 minutes after, I'm like, yay, so that can really lead to either like a very positive or a very negative experience depending on how long my trip takes.
It's also like making sure that Muni is just as good in certain locations, because I know that like Muni by the freeways is harder because the freeway kind of blocks a lot of transit lanes. So I guess like providing more options for people who live closer to freeways.
I would also say just like reliability. The 29, even though it's often crowded, is pretty consistently there every 10 minutes. And being able to do that on the way home is just, it's pretty easy to get there and wait 10 minutes at most and have a bus home.
Thank you all for your input. We really appreciate it. We will definitely take it into consideration and hopefully be able to make changes in the future to make all Muni riding experiences positive.
Yeah, so, sorry, I'm just trying to get acquainted with the microphone. I'll be talking about maintaining systems versus expanding them. Now, Muni is one of the most expensive urban transit systems in America. Just maintaining this large system, that San Francisco heavily relies on costs about $676 million per year or more. This idea of maintaining the system versus expanding it is one that is discussed often within the SFMTA. Often when discussing, this idea, the quality of service, quality of performance, life cycle costs, risks associated with infrastructure, they're all taken into account. And the main conflict surrounding this subject is, funding limitations. And it's the SFMTA's job to sort of find a middle ground and make sure money goes to where goes to the most important parts of the system. Now, some examples of maintaining systems include keeping the assets SFMTA already owns up to date. Other examples include cleaning buses, repairing trains, paying workers. On the other hand, some examples of expanding systems include creating new bus/train routes, remodeling buses/trains, and creating new bike lanes and expanding sidewalks.
Changing lanes, Muni is happy to announce that anyone 18 and under can now ride free. There's no applications, Clipper cards, or proof of payment needed, and all you have to do is get on and ride. However, we do ask that if you're 16 or older to bring proof of ID to ride for free, and if you don't have a form of ID, then the fare inspector may ask for your date of birth. SF Youth can also use their existing free Muni for Youth passes to ride. Lastly, for new passengers, a Clipper card is needed to ride cable cars for free, or a pass can be requested directly from the SFMTA.
What does racial equity look like? Racial equity is important to the SFMTA both internally and externally. SFMTA's Office of Race, Equity, and Exclusion, known as the OREI, was created in order to help SFMTA advance racial equity in both the workforce and on the service it provides. The OREI created a racial equity action plan, which includes changes such as reworking the agency-wide discipline policy and developing a racial equity curriculum. One of the current focuses on equity is SFMTA's COVID-19 response. When making route changes or temporarily closing down routes, the agency must consider the impacts that these changes will have on historically marginalized communities, such as people with disabilities, senior citizens, low-income individuals, and certain racial or ethnic groups, to make sure that these changes do not worsen equity disparities in transit service. The Muni Service Equity Strategy aims to improve transit services in 8 identified equity neighborhoods. These neighborhoods have been selected based on their percentage of households with low incomes, race and ethnicity demographics, and the percentage of people with private vehicles. The service equity strategy also focuses on improving services for senior citizens and people with disability. The Muni Service Equity Strategy reflects SFMTA's values of inclusion and equity.
As we have covered, the SFMTA oversees traffic, biking, pedestrian walking, as well as the planning of the city streets. With this in mind, we are always looking for ways to improve safety for riders and pedestrians. So we'll now open up time for anyone that feels comfortable to share their experiences when they didn't feel safe on city streets due to traffic.
Comments?
I guess I could go. I know this one time I was biking on my way to, I think it was soccer practice, and I remember I was going down a hill, and this, I think it was a mail truck. It hit like this super awkward U-turn, and it almost like hit me, and I had to like push off of it in order to like, I guess, not get hit by it.
One experience I had is people on the street I live in would just zoom up and down it, clearly like going over the speed limit, and it was really dangerous trying to pull out of our garage. And so now speed bumps have been put in after there was an incident on our street when there was a collision. So that was one experience I had.
Anybody in the crowd have any they want to share?
So something that just happened to me on the way here, I was biking down, Howard goes this way, yeah. I was biking down Howard, and so it has like I think it's called a mixing zone, where before like cars that are turning right, they merge across the bike lane. But this car did not decide to merge across the bike lane. They decided to keep going straight and then turn in front of me, like cutting me off. So that was a fun experience getting over here. But I think like just making sure that, you know, because in practice or in theory, the intersection should work. You know, it has all the posts, it has like the separated bike lane, all the signs, you know, no right turn on red. But I think in reality, you know, driver behavior is just like not adapting to those engineering. So I don't know how we fix that, but yeah.
Another experience I've had personally frequently is, especially on Clipper Street, cars do not stop at stop signs very well. And I know that that has led to me almost getting hit a couple times. It's always a stressful experience, but I think that's definitely one of the bigger issues that I see within traffic in San Francisco.
Okay. So something for me is just like for people who bike, it's like impossible to bike in some neighborhoods, but really easy to bike in others. So it's just like making sure that all neighborhoods have bike lanes, because like sometimes you want to get to like one point of the city to the other, but it's just like impossible because the streets are so small. So like you can like only drive or like only take the bus. But if you like rely on that for your mode of transportation, it makes it super difficult to get anywhere.
So these are the type of experiences that the SFMTA is looking to eliminate. Everyone in San Francisco deserves to feel safe on city streets. Every year, about 30 people lose their lives and over 500 more are severely injured while traveling on city streets. These deaths and injuries are unacceptable and preventable, and San Francisco is committed to stopping further loss of life. That's why our transportation agency joined city leaders in 2014 to adopt a policy called Vision Zero, with the goal of eliminating all traffic deaths in San Francisco. Vision Zero is also committed to equity and safety for everyone. Most of the traffic deaths in San Francisco happen in a small percentage of the city. For example, one of these accident hotspots is the Tenderloin, where 20-mile-per-hour speed limits have recently been added to some streets in order to prevent traffic accidents and fatalities.
How does the budget work? You know, a budget is essentially how a government and or business decides on, you know, how to spend their money. a budget, especially for a local government like San Francisco and, a government agency like the SFMTA, it indicates a community's civic priorities, as it's meant to project revenues, costs, a plan for the future, what revenues will pay for which departmental services and for whom those services, exist. The budget to a certain degree is like a strategy that a department or a business or a government uses to outline how today and tomorrow will look. Now, as we go further into the budget, there are certain terms we didn't know. One of these being the two different types of revenues and two different types of expenditures. Now, operating revenues are the revenues a business or government makes off their provided service. For the SFMTA, this would be transit fares, parking permits, parking fines, and operating expenditures are the cost of maintaining these provided services. So for the SFMTA, this would be bus operators, fuel for buses, employee training, that type of stuff. Capital revenues are on the other hand, are generally one-time revenues or just revenues that the SFMTA devote to capital projects, which is infrastructure and equipment. And finally, capital expenditures are the one-time infrastructure and equipment that the SFMTA spend their capital revenues on. Yeah, two other terms that are really important to know are enterprise and general fund departments. An enterprise department is a department that does not need from the city's general fund because it's able to fund itself through a fee or service. On the other hand, a general fund department, kind of like as in the name, is a department that requires a general fund subsidy as it's unable to fund itself through a fee or service. Now, the general fund, or the general fund subsidy, it's essentially just a pool of money that the San Francisco government puts together. So, as I just mentioned, these general fund departments are able to stay afloat and keep going. Now, on to what the SFMTA is, which it's not necessarily either an enterprise or a general fund department, but it's more or less a quasi-enterprise department, and this means that the SFMTA does create its own revenue, but it relies heavily on the general fund subsidy, and that's because although the SFMTA does generate a lot of revenue from bus fares, parking meters, parking fines, and other avenues, because it's so big, these revenues, they're not enough. And this causes the SFMTA to consistently dip into the general fund subsidy to make sure everything runs smoothly and that everything that the SFMTA is trying to provide is provided. Now that we know all these terms, it's easy to break down the budget. State operating grants, parking fines and fees, transit fares, and parking permits, they're all operating revenues. While grants, general obligation bonds, revenue bonds, and sales tax are all capital revenues. The general fund, interestingly enough, is both a capital and operating revenue, as it's called upon as a one-time non-reoccurring revenue and as a regularly reoccurring revenue. Labor materials, contracts, and outside consultants are all operating expenditures, while transit infrastructure projects like creating bike lanes, revamping roads, and making new buses and trains are all capital expenditures. Now, as you can see in this probably overwhelming graphic, there are, you can see the two types of funding and two types of revenues we've discussed. The graph also shows the SFMTA's costs have exceeded our revenues. Specifically, operating costs have exceeded operating revenues, creating what's called a structural deficit. The SFMTA has plugged the gap between operating costs and revenues with one-time capital revenues, but this is simply not sustainable. To summarize, the SFMTA's annual costs are rising faster than its annual revenues, and as I've stated, that's creating a structural deficit. Now, how does the budget impact the SFMTA? Now, as I've mentioned, the budget essentially allocates where money goes and what services are provided and how good those services are. This means depending on how large the budget is, the SFMTA can or can't be ambitious with, its projects. Now, the SFMTA tries to prioritize depending on feedback and outreach. They try to put more money into routes that are used more often, and they try to make lines for communities that use public transportation more often or rely more on public transportation. Now, after the budget is created, it shows the goals of the SFMTA and certain problems that need to or are being addressed. The projects that the SFMTA allocates money to gives us an understanding of what they are trying to do. It shows us not only the goals that the SFMTA is trying to accomplish, but the vision and future that they're trying to create. The budget also highlights certain constraints, because not only the amount of funding, but also the type of funding limits the projects and services that the SFMTA is able to implement. Now, this brings us to our second activity, and once again, this is for the youth. So if you guys could take out your phones and scan the QR code, this is going to take you to our budget form. Where once again the data we collect from this will affect how we help improve Muni and the SFMTA. Now, let's say you had to distribute SFMTA funding in order to create an upcoming budget. Let's also say that you only had $100 to spend. How do you decide what to How will you decide what to fund and why would you fund those things? As you complete this activity, you can discuss a little with the people around you, and after all of y'all have filled out this form, Lindsay will once again hold a kind of more organized discussion.
And if you have any questions about the form or you're having trouble filling it out, YTAB members are here to help, and they will be circulating, asking questions, and providing assistance. YTAB members, feel free to walk around throughout this activity. Okay. Moving on to budget form reflections. Did anyone see an item on the form that they didn't understand or they were confused about what it meant? Wow, that's great. When we first did this form, we were very confused about a couple. Did you see a specific item that you thought was the most important or something that SFMTA should prioritize the most in their spending?
Like, yeah, kind of Alexander's point. Like, is there something on that survey where it's like, if the SFMTA doesn't give money to this, it's like the end of the world to you? Like, this one specific item needs to be funded, you know?
It always has to be me. Come on. Oh well. I think for me, it was really difficult to choose between Vision Zero and restoring 100% of the pre-COVID service. I picked both because I had $100. I don't know which one I would choose. I'd like to say that I'd choose Vision Zero, but I don't know. 100% of pre-COVID service sounds pretty great to me.
And on the flip side, did anyone see anything, any one item that they thought was unimportant or something that they thought the SFMTA should not be prioritizing as much as other items? Great. Moving on.
Okay. So why is this all the information that we just provided important? Well, it is important because the SFMTA budget, you get an understanding of the SFMTA budget, which is a big part and complicated thing to handle, as it is the money to run the whole system, and you need the money to do things. You also understand the budget, which gives you the tools to critically about the SFMTA's values and initiatives. You also understand, and it also allows you to understand how and why certain problems exist, and you understand who you need to go to for a certain problem solution. It also allows you to understand how and why certain problems exist, and you also get a little bit of what it takes to run the big agency that people rely on and making sure that all the expectations are met. With this knowledge, it can be difficult to understand why some problems are easier to solve than others. What may look like an inaction could just mean that the issue is not easily solved. The greater understanding plays right into the saying that knowledge is power. As with this greater understanding, finding and implementing solutions become easier. Without knowing this, youth do not have the necessary tools to create the change or be heard within the agency. And it would make it easier for youth to be involved. So, how can youth be actually involved?
You can be involved in making a change in the SFMTA through a number of different ways. First, you'll be able to sign up for our mailing list. We won't be emailing too frequently, but we will be giving bigger updates and asking for feedback like the ones you've given to us today. And this leads me to the next big way you can help, which is through giving us feedback. You can do this by filling out forms, calling 311 to give feedback, and even directly emailing YTAB or the SFMTA. Again, we really do value you guys' feedback because it allows us to improve the SFMTA for youth experiences. You can also attend meetings and events like the ones we are at today, or join our YTAB meeting bi-weekly on Monday nights from 6 to 8. Finally, you can make a big difference by applying to become a YTAB member in January.
And are there any questions you all have? These can be questions related to the presentation or more general questions about the SFMTA and what it's trying to accomplish in general. One example question is, where can you find more information about the budget? if you go to sfmta.com, you will see budget information and get a more in detail rundown of what the SFMTA is trying to accomplish.
Does the YTAB support expanding school trippers for middle schools and high schools?
I think so. We are here to represent you, and the entire point of this kind of town hall is to understand what the youth of San Francisco want. So, if that's something that you guys support and that you guys want us to do, then yeah, we'll get it done because, that's why we exist.
What does the future of Free Muni for youth look like? As of right now, it's a one-year pilot project, but is there discussion as to what that looks like in the future?
So because it's a pilot project right now, the future is rather uncertain, but hopefully, we hope that it will continue and that it will become a more long-lasting program. And also hopefully, somehow we can make it easier for youth in San Francisco to get IDs so that there's less confusion. And Alexander is also gonna expand more on this.
I can expand on that, and this is kind of be a weird flip, but it's kind of in your plate as a youth commissioner because this program was funded by the efforts from supervisors in City Hall and the mayor. So while the MTA does support it, and while we do as YTAB support it, it basically came from the efforts of people with power in City Hall. So as the Youth Commission, it's kind of up to you guys to also make sure that City Hall is involved in this because the MTA, with our structural deficit, we can make recommendations all we want and we can try our best to get this done, but it is efforts from other people who have the power to make these budgets and make sure that the MTA and its priorities are funded. Like City Hall people, it is up to them to actually make sure that this sort of stuff continues to go along. So it's a partnership possibly between YTAB and other community orgs and other people in power with the city to make sure that Free Muni for all youth can continue to go just beyond a pilot into an actual permanent program.
My question was, how do you plan on collecting input from youth who don't have access to organizations or just aren't a part of things like, like SF Transit Riders or like Youth Commission? How do you want to represent their voices?
One thing we're trying to do, well, obviously, as many people as we can, we would like to reach out and somehow get them to join our mailing list because that's a big way we can send out information and look for feedback. But also just going directly to schools. Like I know for this, Audicon talked to his school about getting people to come here for this. So just going straight to schools, if they can't hear it through an organization like this, then the school could give out information as well.
I think, and to kind of elaborate on Levi's point, that is, kind of, I don't know how to put it into a good analogy, but that is going to be a problem that we're going to have to address. How are we going to be able to reach out to these people? There's been different ideas floated around, creating a social media presence, some sort of getting like QR codes on buses or something like that. But, to be totally transparent, we do recognize that that is something in our, future that we need to address, and, we're going to do our best to address it.
How will the YTAB support students who have had bus lines that have been cut to their schools? Because this is a big issue that many students face. Like I go to Lowell High School and there's 3,000 students there and they can't access a 23 bus line, and my friend here has, I think, a 28R that was cut near his school. Will the YTAB support resolutions or how will they show their support for students around the city who have had bus lines that have been cut near their schools?
One of the things that we are trying to do right now is help recommend which services should be prioritized for COVID recovery. So right now the agency is relying on federal relief because of the budget deficit and COVID operations, or COVID hurt its like finances a lot. But hopefully going back to restoration, the SFMTA is considering multiple plans for restoration, and YTAB, part of our job is to advise on what lines, which things we think should be prioritized. So as students ourselves, we are heavily talking about prioritizing school trip buses.
And just to ask, which line is it, just so we could get it written down, that I guess affects Lowell in particular?
It was the 23 Monterey bus line that was cut. It was cut at West Portal instead of going down to Lowell High School, which adds like half an hour of walking time for students. Thank you.
And actually more on that. So the city is taking steps to improve existing operations, including planning and community engagement processes to bring back more transit service in early 2022. So that community engagement will be really important in determining which bus lines need to come back faster, and also replacing and repairing vehicles so that equipment is repaired will be essential in helping get the full fleet back out. I don't know if anyone else had this question, but I had this question, so I wrote it down. I used to get skipped frequently by my bus, even when it didn't appear full, or it definitely was operating because there were other students on the bus. I actually joined the board to see what was up with that. So SFMTA right now, that shouldn't be happening if you are wearing a mask. So we're looking into this specifically in order to address why youth consistently get skipped over other demographics.
Any other questions?
So some of the folks online were, I mean, I guess it's a comment more than a question, but talking about how other cities have special school bus lines just for students during school hours when they're commuting. So that might be something that I think people are interested in looking into.
Sorry, Sid, could you repeat that? I wasn't able to hear you. Sorry.
Yeah, this is just some of the comments online are coming in about students talking about other cities that have kind of special student-only buses running during commuting hours for students.
Okay, and moving forward to the most fun part of this presentation, it is time to fill out our end of presentation feedback form. This is the exit survey. If you are receiving extra credit from any teachers for coming here, please take a screenshot of your completed exit survey. After you fill out the survey, feel free to pick up some food.
And a heads up that the food is a little bit late, so after you fill out the survey, we have an activity for you outside in the meantime, but it'll be here.
Yes. Due to COVID-19, all of the food, unfortunately, must be taken outdoors to be eaten. So please don't start eating inside. And also, if you have any more questions or comments and didn't feel comfortable sharing with the group, feel free to find any YTAB member after. And we just want to say thank you to everyone who attended. We are really excited to get youth feedback and start working more on representing youth in SFMTA.
I was going to say thank you. Yeah.
You all can feel free to head out into the lobby where the doors are.
The execution was masterful. It was like a